Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. There's been a bit of a gap in product council recently through a variety of circumstances, illnesses, mine and other people's. And so I can only apologize for that, but back to normal service. Today, we're going to be talking about integration with TigerBeetle, replacing the existing Mojaloop ledger technology with a specific, very focused technology aimed at the particular needs of Mojaloop. It's called TigerBeetle. It's managed by the TigerBeetle Foundation. There is a work stream which is dedicated to that integration process. There are joint work stream leads to that. There's James and there's Michael Richards. James come today. He has an alternative appointment, so Michael is going to lead on this readout from the TigerBeetle integration workstream. I think this is going to be a fairly technical session, certainly from an accounting perspective. So you have been warned. So thanks everyone, and over to you, Michael.
Thanks very much. Let me share my screen. Everybody seeing that?
Yes, we can see it clearly, Michael. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, great. The work that's been going on since November is really to think about how we're going to integrate TigerBeetle from an accounting perspective. Now, TigerBeetle is designed to work as a high-speed accounting system, and that means that we're going to have to change over the way in which we store transfer information. And what we've been doing is working through how that might work in a way that will provide the best possible functionality for Mojaloop, while still, of course, maintaining the security of the system. So let me start away. So what we're trying to do is to design an interaction between Mojaloop and TigerBeetle, which will avoid duplication of effort. In particular, we don't want Mojaloop to be doing things which TigerBeetle will also do. We want something which will play to TigerBeetle's strengths, particularly very high speed in terms of throughput. And we want it to be the most effective implementation of TigerBeetle that's possible, while still, as I say, meeting Mojaloop's requirements for security and reliability. And I should also say that this is designed to be a general form of interaction between TigerBeetle and Mojaloop, and it shouldn't depend on particular Mojaloop versions or architectures. So what areas do we want to cover? So first of all, there's the liquidity check. As you know, every time a transfer request is received by the switch checks to see that the debtor party has sufficient funds on hand to be able to settle that transfer when it comes to the point of settlement. That's one of the big bottlenecks in the system at the moment, because obviously we need to ensure that liquidity cover can't be spent twice, and therefore for any given participant, these requests need to be processed in sequence. They can't, at least at present, be processed in parallel. Second, we cover the process of transfer confirmation, the process where the creditor party says to the switch, yes, I'm happy with this. I confirm that I have credited it to my customer, and the switch therefore can record that obligation irrevocably and to say that will definitely be settled. There's also the process of settlement itself, the process of reporting on the state of transfers and on what happened with them. The duplicate check, which, as you know, is every transfer request that's sent through to the system, pardon me, is checked to see whether it is a duplicate, i.e. whether that message has already been sent to the system. If it has, then that is converted. The request is converted to a request for information about the previous request. That's to ensure that if DFSPs get fed up and resend a request, it doesn't result in a customer's account getting debited twice. And finally, there's the question of liquidity reservations. Now, because the systems which are used to settle Mojaloop obligations are not always available 24/7, there are periods, weekends and overnight, when participants need to provide liquidity cover for quite long periods, and therefore to provide more liquidity cover than would otherwise be the case. So Mojaloop provides a functionality which enables a participant to say, I don't want all of my liquidity cover to be used. So when in the daytime, when the system is available and settlements can be reasonably regular, they will probably want less liquidity cover than would otherwise be the case. So rather than having to move funds in and out of the liquidity cover accounts, we provide a function which enables them to reserve those funds and say, I know they're in there, but please don't use them for liquidity cover. The areas that we don't cover here are, we're not going to talk about currency conversion, and we're not going to talk about inter-scheme transfers. We assume that those will continue to be managed externally to the system of actually recording how transfers and indeed currency conversions work in the system. Okay, so let me start then thinking through our proposal. Our plan is that for each participant, for each settlement model, and for each currency, there will be 3 TigerBeetle accounts. The first will be what I'm calling, though not everybody wants to call it this, a settled funds account. Now, this account represents the funds that a participant has available in a bank account, or it might be in securities or a line of credit or whatever it might be. We don't insist that it's in any particular form, but it is. They are funds which have been verified by the administrators of the switch to be available for settlements. The second is what I'm calling an available funds account. Now, the balance in this account is going to be the amount that a DFSP can use to make transfers in the system where it is the debtor party. So I'll talk a little bit more about how the balance in that account is made up in a little while, but that's a single account which actually covers 2 separate accounts at the moment. And then finally, a settlements account. That's a relatively simple account. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. So the settled funds account, as I say, it represents the inverse of the collateral which the participant has for liquidity cover. And what that means is if a participant deposits funds, let's say in a settlement account, then that deposit will appear as a negative in this account. The analogy that I want to use is it's rather like the mobile money systems. Those of you who've been involved with mobile money systems will know that the funds customers hold in a mobile money system are held by the mobile money system in what's called a trust account, or one or more trust accounts. And there is a control account in the mobile money system, which is the inverse of that account. So the way e-money creation works in a mobile money system is funds are deposited in the trust account, and then they are moved from the control account to the account which needs to be credited as a consequence of the deposit of funds. So the idea is that the control account in a mobile money system will always be equal and opposite to the total number of deposits in the mobile money system. And it's essentially a similar principle that we're looking at here. When we create this, we create it with a flag which raises an error if any proposed transfer would result in a positive balance in this account. As we've said, this account is always going to be negative, and it doesn't make any sense for it to be positive. So any transfer which would result in it being positive is rejected. Liquidity is increased by a transfer from this account to the available funds account, and it's withdrawn by a transfer from the available funds account to this account. And settlements, when they're executed, they result in a change to the balance in this account because the number or the amount of funds on hand changes as a consequence of the settlement. So that's the settled funds account. Next, the available funds account, and this represents the current state of liquidity cover for the participant. At any given moment, its balance is the sum of the balance in the settled funds account, less any confirmed transfers which have not yet been settled, less any transfers that have been prepared but not yet confirmed where the participant is the debtor party. So what we're saying is settled funds can be used up either by confirmed transfers which haven't yet been settled, or by transfers which have been prepared but not yet confirmed, i.e. where the liquidity check has been done and funds have been reserved. Now we say this account has a flag set on it which prevents the balance of the account going negative. And the circumstance under which balance would go negative is if a DFSP tried to make a transfer where it was the debtor party, where it did not have sufficient liquidity cover. That would result in a negative balance, and therefore the proposed transfer would be rejected by TigerBeetle. And this effectively says TigerBeetle is doing the liquidity check by trying to make a transfer on this account. When settlements are executed, they don't result in a change to the balance of this account, because what's happening is that funds are changing status, but there is no change to the actual balance. So funds that have been not yet been settled now have been settled, but there's no change to the overall balance of the account. And finally, the settlements account, and this just represents the net of all sums which were received or disbursed in the process of settlement for this account. And a settlement is represented as a transfer between this account and the equivalent settled funds account. So if the participants owed money from the settlement, transfers from the settled funds account to the settlement account. If the participant owes money, it goes in the reverse direction. So those are the three accounts that we plan to use, the three TigerBeetle accounts. And as I say, there will be one of those for each, or sorry, one set of those for each participant, for each settlement model, and for each currency. In simple Mojaloop schemes, there will only be one settlement model, the default settlement model, and one currency, and therefore each participant will have these three accounts. Now let's look at what happens when a transfer is prepared. When a transfer request is received, the prepare handler in the Mojaloop switch performs a liquidity check by attempting to make a pending transfer from the debtor DFSP's available funds account to the creditor DFSP's available funds account. Now, TigerBeetle allows us to define a transfer as pending, and the consequence of a transfer being regarded as pending is that the debit leg of the transfer is counted against the account's balance, but the credit of the transfer is not yet counted against the beneficiary's balance. So what happens, therefore, is that when we try to make a pending transfer, the debit is applied to the balance, and if it is greater than the outstanding balance on the available funds account, then the transfer fails. So that gives us a quick and simple single account check on liquidity. And we can trap that failure coming back from TigerBeetle and send back the message in the way that we normally would now to say, unfortunately, you don't have sufficient liquidity to make this transfer, so it's been rejected. When a transfer is confirmed, the fulfill handler in the switch will try to post the pending transfer which was created in the previous step by the prepare handler. Now, we expect this always to be a successful one, since it can only ever result in, we've already checked that there is a sufficient balance in the debtor account, and of course we don't mind how much of a balance there is in the creditor account. If the creditor DFSP, on the other hand, rejects the transfer, or if the transfer times out, the fulfill handler just cancels that pending transfer, and the balance is set back as if it hadn't happened. So that enables us to have single-step processes for, first of all, preparing and performing the liquidity check, and second of all, confirming and posting the transfer. So that, we think, is the most efficient way of using TigerBeetle's functionality to have single accounts and to just be updating those accounts. Pardon me. So when we look at settling transfers, we expect the balance of the participant's settled funds account to be adjusted by their obligation as a consequence of the settlement. If they're owed funds by the settlement, their settlement funds balance is increased. If they owe funds to the settlement, their balance is decreased. But the balance, as I've said, of the available funds account doesn't change, because that's merely a status change as far as the funds that are represented by the available funds account goes. Reporting, TigerBeetle, of course, I'm going to say, currently supports account balance queries. The results of these queries are segmented into posted entries and pending entries, and individual transfers can be queried if required. So the posted entries against an available funds account will represent a number of different things. And the balance on the settled funds account, we can segment components of the posted entries into entries which have been completed but not yet settled, entries which have been settled, and a balance which is the consequence of depositing funds into the settled funds account. So with a relatively simple arithmetic on the balances, we can check the current balance of any participant's account. This is important for us because one of the things that we definitely don't want to be doing is doing queries on individual transfers and summing them up in order to arrive at a balance. So it's important for us to be able to derive the various components of the balance quickly and simply from balances, and not from, as I say, querying the individual transfers. TigerBeetle, I should say, is working on improving the range of performance of queries, so we can expect that to get better than it is at the moment. But we think that that the situation as it is at the moment is sufficient for our purposes. I should add also that one of the things that we plan to be doing is to have a separate reporting database and to have completed transfers moved across into that database, so that when DFSPs or administrators want to look at particular transfers, they do that against the reporting database and not against the main TigerBeetle database. Okay, so now let me think about the duplicate check. Now, TigerBeetle transfers internally are identified by a unique big int. This can be automatically assigned by TigerBeetle when the transfer is created, or it can be set by the caller. Now, Unique identifiers, like UUIDs or ULIDs, are typically character representations of big ints. And we could therefore use the underlying big int represented by the transfer's unique identifier as the transfer identifier in TigerBeetle. Doing this would enable TigerBeetle to perform the duplicate check, because one of the things that TigerBeetle does at present when a transfer is created is to check if an ID has been given for the transfer, that ID hasn't already been used anywhere in the system. And if it has, it rejects the transfer. So this effectively gives us a way of doing the duplicate check in TigerBeetle rather than doing it separately in Mojaloop. However, that would mean that we couldn't rely on TigerBeetle IDs increasing monotonically. We don't think that's an important consideration, but it's something that's worth bearing in mind. The reason we think that is that, as I'm sure you're aware, when machines generate unique big ints, they typically have a time component as their most significant bits. And the problem that we have, of course, is that there's nothing that says that the time clocks on the various participant servers will all be synchronized with each other, and that therefore, when a stream of messages arrive, they will have monotonically increasing big ints. They might have any kind of big int, and therefore, it's possible that transfers might be added to TigerBeetle in a non-sequential way. Again, we don't think that will be a major problem. Now, let me come around now to talk about liquidity reservations. And this is a theoretical proposal. It's something that we haven't actually decided to do yet, but it's the way we think it should probably work. So where liquidity reservations are required, they can be managed in this way. Each participant and settlement model and currency would have a reservation account. A liquidity reservation would be represented as a pending transfer from the available funds account to the reservation account. Effectively, that would, as we've seen, reduce the available funds in the participant's available funds account by the amount of the reservation. So this would affect the balance in the account and effectively reserve the funds. Reservation amount can be removed by cancelling the pending transfer, a simple operation, or modified by cancelling and then creating a new one. So that essentially is our proposal for using TigerBeetle in Mojaloop. I want to talk about one set of outstanding issues, and then I'll throw things open for discussion, and that's the question of the API. Now, at the moment, our relationship between settlement models and participant accounts is an ad hoc relationship. An administrator sets up ledger account types and then assigns those account types to a settlement model. As we said, the underlying model, we haven't said that. The underlying model for individual accounts has a ledger account type, a currency, and a participant. So we need to change this, I think, to include settlement model. And, I'll rephrase it. The creation of accounts, I think, needs to be associated with either the definition of a settlement model, in which case the set of 3 accounts that I've talked about should be created for each participant, or the addition of a participant, in which case that set of 3 accounts should be created for each settlement model that's available in the scheme. We will be looking at that in the admin API special interest group meetings, but we do need, I think, to make some changes to automate the way in which accounts are managed in order to fit in properly with the way in which TigerBeetle works. Thank you very much for that. And are there any questions?
How much more modeling or specification work do you think you need to do before starting to actually engage in with the developers? And Do you have a prototyping strategy or a proof of concept strategy before moving to actually changing the ledgers themselves within Mojaloop?
Well, what I can show you is, sorry, I have a test harness which you can use to run up actual Tiger Beetle transfers and show how they would work in a multi-participant context, including liquidity check. There is so the last discussion we had at the technical governing board meant that issued in the idea that we were pretty close to agreement that this is the right way. I have agreed to produce some T account charts for perusal by Miller. I plan to have those ready this week, and then they can be analysed. I'm happy to circulate them to anybody who's interested to check those out. So the underlying test harness is an example of how it would work in a real Tiger Beetle context. It shows how accounts should be set up. It shows, for a single settlement model, it shows how transfers should be executed in order to check those things. It does the liquidity check and adds liquidity when required, and it shows the confirmation of transfers. So the underlying proof of concept for this model is there, I think. So we would hope, I think, to be in a position to move to actual test implementation in a Mojaloop system quite quickly, as long as people were happy with the way in which the accounting was intended to work.
And how extensive do you think the changes will be?
Not very is the answer. I think, as I say, one of the things that we're trying to do with this proposal is to outsource quite a lot of the work that the switch handlers are currently performing to Tiger Beetle, because it has those functionalities inside itself. So the work that is currently done in the duplicate check will not now need to be done. We'll have to do some ancillary work if the duplicate check fails, but not a great deal of that. The liquidity check, as I say, is now being outsourced, so all we will have to do is simply to try the transfer and see if it works or not. And again, in the confirmation process, it will be a simple process, and therefore I would expect this will be more a matter of taking code out than of putting code in.
Music to my ears. Paul, you've raised your hand.
Yes. I have been listening to this while I'm driving, so I'm now parked on the side, so maybe I missed it. But the management of the net debit cap or the available funds, that presumably that means we just update the available funds to the same limit, so it isn't a direct representation of the liquidity that's available, but then that would mean that when we do settle, we would have to potentially adjust the available funds.
No.
Did I understand that correctly or not?
The idea of a reservation against the net debit cap is that a pending transfer will be issued from the available funds account to a reservations account, or could be any account. And that effectively means that although those funds have not been posted away from the account, they are not counted in the balance. So effectively the balance in the available funds account is artificially lowered by the reservation amount. And therefore, things will work in exactly the same way as they do now. When you try to make a transfer and the debit is attempted, if that takes it below zero, then it will be rejected.
Well, I think I understand that. My question's about how to
Sorry.
enforce the net debit cap. Are we adjusting the available funds? So let's say your liquidity is 100,000, your net debit cap is 10,000.
Yep.
Would the available funds be 10,000 or 100,000?
The available funds would be 10,000.
And if we did it that way at time of settlement, we might need to add funds back into the available funds.
No, because, well, I mean, I hope no, because you would not have been able to make those transfers that needed to be settled if the if they had exceeded the net debit cap as it was. And you would not be allowed to make a net debit cap reservation if that would mean you couldn't meet all of your obligations. I mean, all of your obligations as they currently.
Yeah, I have a similar doubt like Paul as well. Is I didn't think that we had this artificial limit, like how we have the net debit cap. In a way, it's artificial because it's not the entire liquidity available for transactions. So to me, it seemed like that concept has not been discussed here. And the only limit we have is the liquidity available.
Well, so the only account we have is the liquidity available. That's different. So what we're saying is that all of the things that might affect your ability to transact are taking place as transfers, or sorry, as account entries in the same account, the available funds account. So we have effectively in this case 4 kinds of things. The first is actual availability of funds coming through the settled funds account, i.e. deposits in a settlement account, let's say in a bank somewhere.
Yeah, I understand, Michael. Even so, we had this limit for net debit cap, even if you had more funds available.
Yeah.
That you can use. But I didn't seem like we haven't touched that concept, at least today.
Sorry, my idea is that is managed by this proposal, which I hope you're seeing on the screen. So there is a reservation account, let's say, for a participant, or it could be a single reservation account. And when I want to set a limit, let's say I have 100,000 in my settled funds account, and I want to reserve 50,000 of that. I make a pending transfer from my available funds account to the reservation account of 50,000, and that has the effect of lowering my available funds balance from what it was to 50,000 less than that. So now I can't make any transfers which would raise my total obligation, including both funds that are reserved and funds that are waiting to be settled. I can't raise that beyond 50,000 because this transfer is getting in the way of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does it have a timeout?
No, it doesn't have a timeout.
Okay. Yeah, it shouldn't.
It's just a transfer. It's an artificial adjustment of the balance. You can cancel it very simply, or alternatively, well, actually, no, we're going to say you can't post it because that doesn't make any sense. But you can cancel it, and that's a very quick thing to do.
Yeah, that's the only operation I think available for that.
Yes, indeed. So, have I answered your question, Sam, and indeed Paul, if it's the same question?
I think so. Yes. I think there's a subtle change in behavior from how it works right now. So if, let's say, in a settlement window or settlement period, you were a net debtor, so you were paying money, then after the settlement, your sort of liquidity got adjusted down, and your position account got reset back to 0, which means that the available funds, if the net debit cap is the limiting factor, would be at a similar level again. So that's what I meant by an adjustment up of the uh, um, of the available funds account. But the way you've described it is a slightly different mechanism, but maybe more one that's slightly more aligned with how people would like to perform their reservations. So if so at the moment the net debit cap's set at a fixed level, and in other words, the outstanding position can never get greater than that level. But then during settlement, your settlement account's liquidity goes up and down as ownership of that pre-funded liquidity moves between participants. Um, this this approach would be to rather than quantify the maximum you can spend. This is how much I don't want you to spend. So
Well,
of
that's
my
true.
total liquidity, this is the amount I don't want you to spend. So please don't spend that unless I give you instruction to spend more.
Yep.
And I think that's probably more intuitive and a better way of managing it. So thanks for explaining it.
It's a pleasure. Sam, you had your hand up. It's down again, I see now.
I was giving it a thumbs up, Michael. Yeah, just to confirm, it's yeah, we're achieving that behavior with this. Thank you. It's only that during settlements we may have to take into account the reservation account as well.
I think we should not be taking into account the reservation during settlements. In my mind, and I'm happy to be argued against, what happens in a settlement is that some of the funds change status. Funds that were cleared but not settled are now settled, but the overall balance of available funds does not change. Making a settlement doesn't alter the amount of available funds that you have. Making a deposit into your settlement account does. A separate deposit, an independent deposit, does make a change to that, or indeed a withdrawal. But the process of settlement itself does not change the amount of available funds that you have.
If so, the reason I need to take it into account is because, let's say, after the settlement, the funds are used up in the available funds account. Should we not then look at the reservation account and achieve the artificial net debit cap behavior before by canceling that and then moving only, let's say, 40,000 instead of like 50,000 earlier, if it became zero?
Yeah. And my answer is we shouldn't. The participants should.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So absolutely. So if it turns out that the participant runs out of available funds and they've got an amount reserved, they should go onto the system and remove that reservation or make it smaller. But that's not a matter for that any automated process should be doing, at least not in my mind. There will be and will continue to be, I think, an automated process that sends people a mail to say you are within 10% or whatever of your net debit cap limit. You need to do something about that. But that's a different matter. At least in my mind, it's a different matter.
It definitely does require a different way of thinking about these things, which is no bad thing in itself. But yeah, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I'll make a quick question.
Mm.
Hello. Hi, Michael. You
Hi,
mentioned
Juan.
that. Hello. You mentioned that a lot of the development effort will be taking code out instead of putting code in. And the question is regarding the scope of testing. There's a lot of golden path and end-to-end tests in place, but what are your thoughts on adding unit tests for the functionality being outsourced to TigerBeetle?
That's a very interesting question. TigerBeetle does very comprehensive testing. And I am assured, more or less reliably, by Joran of TigerBeetle that they take this extremely seriously and they've spent a lot of money on it. there is a point of view that says we should be looking at that. And I hope that one of the things that the people who are engaged in this process are going to be doing is making sure that that they report back to the Mojaloop Foundation that they are confident that Tiger Beetle testing is comprehensive and that we are happy to use it. On the other hand, I'm going to point to a large number of open source products that we currently use without making that check. And what I want to say is that the golden path check in Mojaloop should be picking up the issues that we need to be picked up. And if it's not doing that, then it needs to be extended so that it does. So I think that probably in the long run, I want to be able to treat Tiger Beetle in the same way as I do Kafka, i.e., it's something that we test to see whether its effects are correct, but we don't test it internally to see whether it's working correctly. Does that make sense?
Yes. Just trying to understand that balance, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I think my idea and my hope, and I think Tiger Beetle's hope as well, is that the two of us will work collaboratively in the first instance to make sure that we are both happy. They that we are using Tiger Beetle correctly, and we that Tiger Beetle is operating correctly. Once that's happened, I would hope that we can go on to, as I say, to treat, to behave more as customers than as collaborators.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Does anyone else have any other questions? No? Well, I'm going to ask Michael to share this deck, and I'll also be putting the recording on the Product Council YouTube channel later today, so that people can revisit the flows and satisfy themselves that they understand and comprehend what's going on there. So hopefully any follow-up questions will come in through Product Council Slack channel or direct to Michael or myself, and we can follow up then.
Thanks. Can I ask a quick short question?
Yes, please do, Sean.
Michael, have you put any thinking into the get transfers behavior, the querying?
I am expecting that. Oh, sorry, we've had a discussion about this, and I'm not sure whether we are really decided on this. That a get transfers can it can have one of two answers. One is an indeterminate answer, which says this transfer is being processed, and the other is this transfer is finalized, and this is what it is. And the second answer, is an answer that comes from the reporting database, in my view.
As in, because of the absence of it?
Because of the absence of
the record?
No, sorry.
Because we discussed the reporting database was for finalized transfers.
Yes, indeed. It's for finalized transfer. And I mean, I think that when we've had this technical discussion in the past about what sort of status should be returned for transfers that are in flight, I think the answer was you just need to return an answer that says this is being processed and I can't tell you where it is.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Michael. Maybe we can massage that messaging in one of the handlers sitting in front of Tiger Beetle. But if Tiger Beetle can give us that answer at least, maybe that is sufficient.
Well, to drop down into the technical side of things for a moment, one of the things that we will need to be able to do is to store information about do we need to store? So I think we're going to be storing information about the transfers that Tiger Beetle has processed and which are awaiting confirmation. And we're going to need to do that because of timing out, which Tiger Beetle, I think, we're not going to ask to do. And therefore, it should be possible at the front end for a handler to say, if you get a get parties and the answer comes back, yes, it's something that I'm waiting for, the answer should be pending. If it doesn't find anything in the pending status, then it should go to the reporting database and get it from there.
Okay.
However, that's something which I think the DA could profitably discuss.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Because you know, Michael, like we have this, I don't know if unique, but a good behavior where we kind of absorb the request if it's in progress because a response is coming subsequently soon. And if it is in final state, then report its status. So yeah, and also the duplicate handling, if it's the same message, we kind of use the get behavior in that context as well. So,
Yes, indeed.
thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I don't know about anyone else. I'm certainly going to review the recording later on today. So thank you,
Yeah, if
everyone.
anyone has any questions or wants to discuss any of this, then by all means get in touch with me. I'll be very happy to talk about it.
Yep. Great. Thanks, everyone. And we'll call it a day. Thanks for joining and see you again soon.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thanks.